Welcome to a special edition of Fringe Element, out of the house in a special studio here with That SEC podcast, SEC Mike Bratton, SEC Mike on Twitter. I am Braden Gall. You can get to me on Twitter at Braden Gall. This is the SEC East over-under edition. You've got over-unders over there on every team in the SEC East. We're going to run through all the schedules. We'll pick some games. We'll talk about rosters. We'll talk about expectations. And if you want the entire West edition of this, make sure you go check out That SEC podcast with Mike and myself. It's over on his feed at his YouTube page. Tell everybody where they can find it.
Yeah, thatsecpodcast.com, or just search That SEC Podcast, available on every podcasting platform, YouTube, or search SEC Mike. I tweet constantly about SEC football. That's the best way to find me.
Yep, everybody knows about you, man. So everybody knows how to find you. So we appreciate it, of course, for everybody hanging out. Rate, review, subscribe, share the show, all that great stuff. And if you want the West, exact same conversation. It's all on his feed, so you got to go over to his feed to check it out. So you take over from here, man.
All right, so now we're going to do Florida.
We're going to start. So we're going to tell everybody what I kind of told everybody there what we're going to do, but go ahead and give the rundown of what the goal is of this conversation.
Yeah, so I just thought it would be a fun way to set the over-unders. These are hypothetical over-unders, but we follow SEC football like fanatics, so we have a good idea of where this over-under line is going to be at. So I feel like I'm pretty close to this is my prediction of where Vegas will set these over-unders for every team. We run down the schedule. I ask you, would you go over or under the hypothetical team win total? And again,
in March,
this is just regular season. Doesn't count SEC championship game. Doesn't count a bowl game. And then we're putting confidence level on the over-under.
Okay, let me ask you a question first. Do you gamble?
In
the fall.
Oh, well, I actually...
do you actually put real money on, like, when everybody makes picks?
Right.
We all make picks.
Mm-hmm.
We all talk about our bets.
Yeah.
But do you put money on those bets?
I'll be honest with you, Braden. Because you kind of went different direction there. You said in the fall.
On college football games.
I don't in the fall.
Interesting.
Where I bet is in the spring and summer. Because I feel like I have a knowledge to where I know where the odds makers are making mistakes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was talking games more.
When the games start coming around, they're too good. I don't put money on it.
No, it's funny you say that. I'm the same way. Like I've won Georgia national championship bets in February twice. I've had Georgia winning the national title the last 2 years, and I got my odds in February.
Yeah.
I agree. Like I hammered LSU over when it was 6.5 last year in like March. I think you're exactly right. Gambling, if you're listening to this show and Mike's show, you have more information and knowledge about these teams than almost anybody at this stage of the year. So that's actually a great point. I think now is the time. Now there's a portal window that's going to open and rosters are going to change. So it's
right.
There's still some risk involved. I gamble on football games in the fall, but not much money. We're talking beer money. Like I put a beer on a game that I care about. Like I don't view it as a revenue stream. I view it as an entertainment.
Right.
So,
but that's why there's value in what we're doing right now. Because
I agree.
When Vegas comes out with their over/under, if they miss it by just a game is big. But if they miss it by 2 or 3, the number we're talking
easy
about,
money then.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
So let's start with Florida. I'm gonna run down the schedule real quick. At Utah, right out the gate, tricky. McNeese State at home, week 2. Tennessee at home. Charlotte at home. At Kentucky. Vanderbilt at home. At South Carolina. Georgia, of course, in Jacksonville. But you got two weeks to prepare for that game. November 4th, Arkansas at home. At LSU. At Missouri. Florida State at home. Oof. I'm setting the over-under for the Florida Gators. I can't believe I'm even saying this, Braden. 6.
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I think they're a 500 football team.
But usually the standard is
9,
10, 8.5, something like that.
And Graham Mertz, of course, is having the greatest spring in the history of Florida quarterbacks. Spring practice reports are so dumb. I believe in Billy Napier. I think he's a good coach. I believe in the structure he's built. I just think they're just not there yet at certain positions. Like the depth is just not there.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback, Mertz might have his best season. He was a big time recruit coming out of high school, played for 3 years in a bad offense at Wisconsin. Never really got back to being as good as he was like in his first game, basically.
Yeah.
but he's got some talent, and I think he'll be playing in an offensive system that's better. I just don't know where this roster is altogether. The youngest defensive coordinator in the history of the world. But God, does he talk like an SEC defensive coordinator? Austin Armstrong. I like him, man. I think he's a fascinating hire because, and I think you've said this, like he's either going to be like the head coach at Auburn in 3 years or out of a job forever. Like and I kind of agree with that but you don't get this kind of gig at that age without being pretty talented. So
right. I
think they've got a lot of good building block foundational pieces, but I don't think the roster is there, and the schedule is like there's more top 15 teams on that schedule than people realize. Like Utah's preseason top 15, Tennessee's preseason probably top 15-ish, Georgia number 1, Florida State's top 10 preseason. Like there is a lot of, like, South Carolina is going to be a revenge game for South Carolina. They got smoked by Florida last year. A bad Florida team smoked a good South Carolina team, and now that game's in Columbia. The Tennessee game is interesting. They could get the Vols. They could beat Tennessee in that game.
Yeah.
If they do, they probably hit the over. But I think there's a baked-in, almost guaranteed 3 or 4 losses. So
it's a bad time for Florida to start beefing up the non-conference. For 40 yeyears they didn't do it. Now they've done it.
Well, they've they always play good non-conference games. They just play them in Florida. They don't. Yeah,
right.
They just don't. Like they've played Miami, and they also play Florida State every year, which is pretty big time for the last 35 years. I 5-7 doesn't feel right, but 7-5 doesn't either. Which is what you're asking me.
Replacing 4 of 5 on the offensive line. Billy Napier wants to ground and pound it.
I think they're a 500 football team. I think 6-6 is right. I think you put the number right on it. So no confidence, 0 confidence. But give me, I guess the under, but I don't. Florida at 5-7. How about this? Dan Mullen, if the 12-team playoff would have existed, Dan Mullen would have taken Florida to the playoff in his first 3 seasons. And people probably still would have been pissed.
Yep.
Think about what this 12-team playoff is going to do to people's minds and to their expectations and to coaching careers. It is going to be fascinating. Think about that. Dan Mullen, fired from Florida.
But didn't Jim McElwain also go to back-to-back SEC title game? And then they fired his ass, too.
That was a function of the division, though.
Yeah.
Like, Florida almost beat Alabama under Dan Mullen in the SEC title game. Like, it was not a poorly coached team.
And that was an undefeated Alabama, too. That was not getting tested by hardly anyone.
Right. It's a poorly recruited organization, as we are now learning.
Yeah.
Because Dan Mullen coaching, again, 3 straight years would have made the playoff in his first 3 seasons at a job and gotten fired. Like, that is wild to me. But that's a different topic.
All right, how about Georgia? I think this is an easy number to set.
12-0. 12-0, dude.
Well, basically, yeah. Well, let's run down the schedule real quick.
No, why? What's the point?
UT Martin at home.
Loss.
Ball State
Loss.
At home. South Carolina at home. UAB at Jesus Christ.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
At Auburn versus Kentucky at home. At Vanderbilt, which will be a home game for them even. Florida and Jacksonville. Missouri at home. Ole Miss at home. At Tennessee. And at Georgia Tech. Over under 11.5. I think that has to be the number.
Oh, over. I mean, the only game that Florida's a weird game because weird things happen. It's like the Iron Bowl. Weird things happen in that game. Both teams get up like crazy. But no chance. Tennessee's really the only one that scares you. And that has to be, Joe Milton has to hit. He has to be great. The offense, the new like their Tennessee could be very dangerous, that road game. But what game on that schedule is Georgia going to be less than like a 17-point favorite? Like they are going to be a 2-touchdown favorite in every game they play, with the exception of maybe Tennessee. And maybe that one is 9 or 10 points. Maybe that's a single-digit spread. Maybe. So I'll go 12-0. They don't lose the game. I mean,
let me ask you.
We don't even know who the coordinator is or who the quarterback's going to be, and it's like I don't care.
Does Kirby want some close games? Because I feel like he almost would want some for because if you just coast through this thing, I made the argument the other day that they could be going into Tennessee and not know what they got at quarterback. Basically,
yeah, I think I heard you talking about that. Basically, you get into a playoff situation, you don't know what you have at quarterback. You've gone 12-0. And I do think you're right that Tennessee on the road, Neyland, depends on how good Tennessee is. If Tennessee slips up a few times, there's going to be a lot less expectations on that game. But if they're 9-1, or I don't know what the record would be at that time, like 8-1 maybe. I don't know how many games. It's pretty late in the year. I don't know what Tennessee's number. Whatever. If Tennessee's a 1-loss team going into that game and Joe Milton's playing well, holy shit, that's gonna be a big time situation. Neyland's gonna be crazy. They could score. I just don't think they're good enough to be like. I agree. You probably want the test for your quarterback, but like also if you're throwing the ball in the first half against teams like South Carolina and Kentucky and Florida, Missouri, even like Missouri's really good on defense. Like these are not terrible football teams.
You're right.
They're, in any other conference, they're pretty good football teams. So I think he's tested. I think whoever wins the job is plus you're practicing against Georgia's defense. so you're probably tested in practice pretty hard as well.
Yep.
Even the third stringers. So I don't subscribe. I think it's a good question. I am not concerned about it. I think they're too good everywhere else.
Yeah.
Like all you need is Joe Tarashinsky. And they're 12.
Who the hell's that?
Who's Joe Tarashinsky?
I don't remember that guy.
Starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs under Mark Richt. I think he gave way to Matt Stafford, I believe. I want to say. But Joe Tarashinsky won the job. I think it was after David Green, after Quincy Carter maybe, or something like that. And he was just like a placeholder.
Yeah.
But all you need is
Was he any?
not a high recruit.
What about Grayson Lambert?
Grayson Lambert from Virginia.
I remember that guy.
Yeah. First of all, I love Kirby Smart quarterback controversies. They're so much fun because like he kind of like Jimbo Fisher, like he can't get out of the way of them. And I think there's like some weird mental like genius to that. Like Kirby the Justin Fields Jake Fromm thing, the JT Daniels Stetson Bennett thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like now he's got 3 guys. One of them's got to transfer. If he does, whoever's third place, whichever Georgia Laxboro doesn't win the job, Gunner, Brock, or Stetson, or Carson, like somebody's going to transfer.
I don't know. I've heard you say that. I've heard a lot of people say that. I'm not convinced of it.
I mean, maybe. I just think.
Carson Beck could be one and done. I mean, that's a leap because we've not even really seen him.
You mean start one season and then
jump to the NFL?
Yeah, sure.
Gunner is a huge Mike Bobo guy, so I think he'll stay. So maybe Brock Vandegrift maybe, but
if Gunner Stockton is clearly third on the depth chart by a mile, now they won't say any of this.
He's only in his redshirt freshman year though.
They want to keep as many guys. Now coaches, it's in their best interest to keep competitions at every position because you don't want guys to transfer at any position.
Right.
So you're never going to name a starter. I appreciate when a coach makes it pretty obvious to a player because it gives the player the best opportunity to do what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that in closed-door meetings, Mike Bobo and Kirby Smart are telling whoever's third that they're clearly third going into fall camp. Like I would hope that just out of courtesy, I hope they would do that. And if they do that,
Georgia courtesy,
yeah, valid. But like, do you care about your kids? Like and I think Kirby does. Like I think he does. So just get him to slow down on the interstate. Like Jesus.
But
everyone in Georgia have to
let's say I'm Brock
150 miles
Vandegrift and Carson is ahead of me. I mean, how many times? I mean, I realize I'm kind of. This is not the way college football is anymore. But who knows? Maybe Carson is miles ahead of you in fall camp. You get it in the season, and he shits the bed halfway through the season.
Oh, I think
that's
Brock,
the way I'd be looking at it. Like,
No, I think Brock is. That's what I'm saying. I think the third guy is the one who. Leaves.
Okay.
If I'm Gunner Stockton and I'm clearly third,
yeah,
I would hope that I know and that the coaching staff makes it clear that I'm clearly third. And at that point, that's when you transfer. But if I'm Brock Vandegrift, who I think is the battle with Carson, I think it's Carson and Brock that are battling to start this year, and it's close. Yeah, there's no reason to transfer. Like same thing with Jalen Milroe at Alabama. Like why?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're battling with Ty Simpson and you barely lose the job, it's still important. Like you can still get reps.
Because I would tell
now,
those guys.
Ty's younger though. Like he could start for 3 years, whereas to your
right.
point, Carson could be a one and done guy, and that's when if you're Vandegrift, you go okay.
See, I would tell those guys, not that they'd ever listen to me, but I'd tell those guys, where are you going to go that's better than the backup at Alabama?
Well,
you're a play away.
True, but there's only one football, and
guys get hurt all the time, man.
I mean, I agree. I agree with you. You're not.
Is the starter at UAB? Well, I wouldn't even think it'd be that good. It'd be like.
Oh no, I think you'd go better. I think you'd be even better than UAB. But look, almost. I think it's 40% of Power 5 schools have a transfer quarterback that's going to start this year, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can go play.
But the time, if you're going to do that, the time is already passed. You got to be in there for spring. I feel like
it's the next window. I think the next window is when I would hope coming out of spring practice that the guy who's third at Georgia understands that he's third, as told to him by the coaching staff. That's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to tell the guy that you're clearly third. And if you're then clearly third, you have a decision to make as a young person. Do I stick it out at Georgia and maybe get like a third national championship ring as a third stringer running the scout team? Or do I want to go start for Wake Forest and run Dave Clawson's offense and win 9 games in the ACC? That's not a decision you and I have ever faced. We don't know what goes through kids' heads when they do make those decisions. But
well, when you put it like that sounds pretty attractive.
Right. I mean, like right now, 60%, like 50, 60% of quarterbacks in the Power 5 are transfers.
Yeah.
I mean, Kentucky's bringing a guy in from NC State. Like, this is Jaden Daniels is a transfer. 3 guys at Ole Miss are transfers.
Right.
Like, there are transfers everywhere, and it's because there's only one football, and you got to start. So, we're off on a tangent here, but like, I don't know if it matters. I think your ultimate question about the quarterback and does Kirby want to test it, or who's best, or who's good, or who's got the most upside, or all this stuff, it does come down to if the guy is good, they're probably going to win a third national championship. If the guy is not, and he's just an average quarterback, they're still probably going to go 12-0.
Yeah.
But then they're vulnerable in the SEC championship game at Tennessee, vulnerable in the playoff. But I mean, Jake Fromm almost won a national championship.
Yeah.
Because of Georgia's depth and quality. Like, that's where Kirby is now, dude. Like, and 3 straight is unprecedented. It's unprecedented in the modern era of college football. So they're trying for something special this year, which I think, again, with that schedle,
right.
12-0 is where they're going to be.
All right, how about Kentucky? This could go.
This is a tough one, man.
Wild, variations here. Ball State at home, Eastern Kentucky at home, Akron at home, at Vanderbilt, Florida at home, at Georgia, Missouri at home, Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State, Alabama. At least you're getting them at home.
Yeah, that's the bad one.
At South Carolina and at Louisville. 7.5 is what I got for Kentucky.
Oh, man.
And remember, I mean, they win 10 games now. They're disappointed. It's wild.
They've won 10 games twice in the last few years. I also really believe in Stoops. I really believe in the defense. I think they fixed a lot of problems, which is ironic because you're losing probably a first-round draft pick at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But Devin Leary, 2 years ago, 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions for NC State. He's a really good fit for what Liam Cohen wants to do, who I think is like if you look at the yards per play on offense for Kentucky, over the last like 6 years, there's one that stands out, like a full yard per play better than everybody else ever, and like it was the year Liam Cohen was there. They have great receivers. They've got really good weapons. They've got a massive defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to run a lot more tempo and a lot more spread, which I think Leary's pretty good at. I'm curious about how that all fits with his skill set. He's more of a pocket guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would go under 7. And my instinct is to go under 7.5 to take them at 7-5 because the schedule is so hard. Just because the games are tough. Like
if you subbed out Alabama for Auburn, I'd go over in a heartbeat.
I think that's fair. I mean, it sounds like you're just taking over for everybody. Somebody's got to lose games here.
Right.
I'm
an over guy in the offseason.
I believe in Kentucky foundationally, kind of like Brian Kelly at LSU. I just believe in him, but it's always the upside question with Kentucky. Like, what's your upside against the best teams? And now Tennessee's much better. That's a tougher game, although Mark Stoops couldn't beat Jeremy Pruitt either, so which is strange because Jeremy Pruitt sucks at coaching football. That's a tough one, dude. Kentucky is one of the most interesting teams in the league this year.
Yeah,
they're utterly fascinating. Where you're taking the over?
I think I am. Yeah, on Kentucky.
I
think they'll surprise.
So 8 wins.
At least one team. They got a chip. When we disrespect them, that's when they show up the best.
Yeah, that's a lot of teams in this league. It sounds like. I could buy into 8-4 pretty easily. That one, honestly, I know I'm supposed to have a take here, but I can't. This is. My gut instinct was to go under 7.5 when you first said it, but you kind of I feel like you've talked me into 8-4. If Florida craters, they're going to provide some extra wins to people. If South Carolina takes a step back, they could provide some extra wins to people. But South Carolina is in a better situation going into this year than either of the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of done it with special teams and beamer ball and like great clock management, and I don't know if that changes. So I don't know if they take a step back. It's just the East is just as fascinating as the West. It's Georgia 1, and then everybody else is basically even. And You know what else might be a huge factor in all this? Missouri is a huge factor in all these win-loss totals.
Well, let's talk Missouri
Let's
then.
get to Missouri because
Schedule.
I am fascinated by Missouri.
South Dakota at home, Middle Tennessee at home, Kansas State at home, Memphis, that's in St. Louis, but still, you should have a home field there. At Vanderbilt, LSU
They could
at
be
home.
5-0 going to the LSU game.
Yep. At Kentucky,
Oof.
South Carolina at home, which you beat last year on the road.
Mm-hmm.
At Georgia, you gave Georgia a good a game as anybody. Tennessee at home, Florida at home, at Arkansas.
Dude, there are a lot of winnable games on that schedule for Missouri.
I'm setting the over-under, and I already know where you're going to go with this one. 6.
Over.
I think that's where Vegas will set it.
Over.
Because there's some talk Drake could be fired.
Over.
I ain't buying it. They just gave him an extension. I don't know why they did that, but they did.
Well, because they're not worth the paper they're printed on. It's just for the headline and the PR.
Yeah.
I'm going over though. I think Missouri is sneaky dangerous.
Second most returning production in the SEC.
A&M number 1.
If they let's say they strike at quarterback, which is that's taking a big assumption, but I love Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator. I think that'll be a major upgrade.
Missouri and A&M are like parallels. Different level of recruits.
Texas A&M fans just got so mad.
But it's just the storyline.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Head coach.
That was Braden that said it.
Head coach
at Braden Gall.
Head coach who's got an offensive background as developing quarterbacks, but hasn't been able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Finally turns over the reins to an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Exact same story. Second,
Neither one of them have ever done that before.
Number 1 most returning production in their division for
Mm-hmm.
both teams. A&M's number 1 in the conference, and Missouri's number 2 in the conference, and number 1 in the East.
Yep.
They have a young returning quarterback who got starting experience last year. I'm just saying the parallels are very similar.
Yeah.
And a lot of winnable games for Missouri. There's a lot of games in there where you don't think about it, and all of a sudden Tennessee at Missouri is like a 7-point spread. Missouri's at home as a 6.5-point underdog. That's a winnable game all of a sudden.
Yep.
Now, Missouri historically has not been good against Tennessee, but like they've historically beaten Florida in really weird games. They've played Kentucky extremely close. They beat South Carolina last year. Like, I think this is a dangerous team. This is an 8-win team potentially if all things break right. Quarterback position is the biggest question.
Mm-hmm.
If Brady Cook is fully healthy, he's a little bit more mobile than people think. Sam Horn's pretty solid. Jake Garcia's a good quality transfer. They've got options at that position. They got weapons everywhere. The defense is loaded. I mean, they hit gold with Baker, the coordinator.
Yeah.
They fixed their defense in 1 year. They were one of the best defenses in the league last year. That is a good football team, and there's a lot of winnable games on that schedule.
And I didn't like Brady Cook last year, but then you come to find out he was injured, and it's like, how the hell do you evaluate him then? You know what I mean?
And again,
and he got better as the season
ran the
went
ball
on.
like crazy too. Like,
yep,
sneaky athletic. So that is you hand over play calling, which Drinkwitz is doing much smoother than Jimbo Fisher. You got a lot of weapons on that team.
Yep.
There's a lot to like about Missouri. I'm going over,
and
I feel pretty good about it.
I know this is a team you hate, the South Carolina Gamecocks here. Tricky schedule
Damn,
right out the
I
gate.
can't get out of that one, can I?
North Carolina, it's in Charlotte. Tricky game.
Ooh,
they got a bad history in Charlotte outside of the last time they were there. Furman at home, at Georgia, Mississippi State at home. Tricky game.
If you start 1-3, the wheels could come off.
At Tennessee, revenge game.
1-4. Tennessee is going to smoke that ass. I'm just telling you.
Florida at home, at Missouri, at A&M.
They beat Florida.
Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt at home, Kentucky at home.
All winnable too.
Clemson at home. I've got the over-under for the South Carolina Gamecocks, 8.
Under.
Why do you hate Shane Beamer?
I know. It's a very punchable face. No,
at Braden Gall.
No, I don't hate Shane. I don't hate Shane Beamer. We had a whole episode last week about South Carolina fans still hating me for thinking that I hate South Carolina. I love South Carolina. I've got nothing. I don't like mustard-based barbecue. I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
But I think everything else about South Carolina. I love the state of South Carolina. It's a great state. I love the Low Country. Which I know is not Columbia, but
But they have started slow every year under Beamer.
Dude,
now,
and
admittedly, that's only 2 years, so maybe that's not fair.
Well, and they've situationally, and this is the thing, they are so good, and we learned this last week on the show. Part of what has made they're great on special teams, which is Beamer ball, of course.
Yeah,
but they are great in game. They Shane Beamer is, for all the weird memes of him cheering when he's down 28-0. He is great at They are great at managing the situations and clock management. When to use. I don't know what the offense is going to look like. I don't know if you get consistency out of Spencer Rattler. They've got really good weapons in the air around him. So if the offense
Mm-hmm.
is simplified the way it was last year in the second half, maybe they can make some strides. But
Being unable to stop the run is an issue.
That the defense is
in this conference.
a question. My question about South Carolina is really based on is the team built foundationally on all these things that we love about good teams, right? Just like Iowa football. Just
Oh God, don't compare
like,
them to Iowa.
No, I just mean from a well-coached discipline.
yeah.
They never do anything wrong. Like they do everything right. They're great. They're great in all three phases. Like they don't make mistakes.
They
on
force
third
you
down.
to make the mistake.
Right. And like when you play that, is that what Shane Beamer has done to South Carolina? I think there's a chance he has. But can you?
But that's kind of what you got to do when you're building it up, right?
But can you continue to take steps and
Yeah.
get to 9-10 wins and compete with the top teams in the conference with just that?
Right.
The recruiting's coming around, but I think it takes time for that. I think this is one of those teams where we've talked a lot on both these episodes where if the team feels disrespected, they come out and they play well. I think South Carolina is going to face expectations this year.
Yeah.
And that's a different place for them to be in. And how do they handle that with, again, a roster that is not all that much better than last year? It's almost exclusively tied to Spencer Rattler hitting his ceiling. If Spencer Rattler realizes his potential, they got great tight ends, they got great receivers. DeCarrion Joyner is going to be used in a bunch of different ways. Like they're going to be fun to watch. Dow Loggins was the head coach or the coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. He's kind of like I don't want to say a punchline with Tennessee Titans fans, but like they kind of laugh. Like when Tennessee Titans fans rattle off all their woes at offensive coordinator, he's on the list.
Yeah.
But college football is so much easier. So for a coordinator, and you've got Rattler.
So is it overly simplistic? I mean, guys like you and I, we need something to talk about all off season. But is it as far as Spencer Rattler can take him and having confidence in him? Because I know you hate him, but I
don't hate him. I think he's a fine player. I just don't think he's consistent. I mean, again, I think he's got potential, and if in the right system with the right pieces, like some of those games for South Carolina, like Florida at home, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, I'm not looking at it, but like you've got, Missouri, that's a tough defense, but a winnable game.
Yeah.
Clemson, I think, is going to be much better this year, which on offense in particular. I think getting Garrett Riley to come coach their offense with Cade Klubnik is a big step forward.
We don't talk good about oh wait,
fine.
This is your show, right?
Yeah, we can
do it on your show.
Can we say negative? Can we say negative things about Dabo but positive things about Clemson? Can we do that?
You'll never catch me saying anything good about him, but
no,
you go for it.
No, I don't. I mean, Dabo's a fine coach. He's fine. I think he's fine.
Jesus, is there main?
My favorite quote of all time, though, maybe in the history of college football, because Dabo Swinney and Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State have really reached like yelling at clouds on the front porch status.
Yep.
Like just two old cranky white dudes, and I think Dabo, like we've been in the name, image, and likeness business for 30 years. The name, image, and likeness of Jesus Christ. I just think it's the most Dabo Swinney thing ever in the history of the world. Anyway, hired a really good coordinator, and they've got a good quarterback now. I think Clemson's better.
Yeah.
So there's winnable games for South Carolina, but there's a lot of losable games for South Carolina.
Yep.
And it all depends on how when the quarterback played great against Tennessee, played his best game of his career, they won.
Yeah.
And when the quarterback doesn't play great, they get smoked by Florida.
Yep.
A bad Florida team. So it is not about like insulting Spencer Rattler. It's just like, dude, he's got to be consistent. And if he plays his best football, they can win a lot of these 50-50 games and probably probably get to 8 wins.
Yep.
And be good. But to suggest that South Carolina fans know that that's going to happen, or that you or I know that that's going to happen is kind of silly to me. So I love you, South Carolina fans. You guys are awesome. You guys are great. Great game day atmosphere. Great state. I love everything about it. My brothers live in Charleston. I vacation in South Carolina. There's no hate, man. Nothing's happened to me. No ill will on Twitter. Like nothing. I just honestly think there's consistency questions with your quarterback. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
And if he's really consistent, they'll be pretty good.
Now let's move on to we can't talk South Carolina about Tennessee.
Yep.
Virginia in Nashville. I don't know why the hell they're playing that game in Nashville. Austin Peay at home.
Money, dude.
At Florida. UTSA at home. South Carolina.
That UTSA game is way trickier than people think.
Get the hell out of here. South Carolina at home. A&M at home. At Bama. at Kentucky, UConn at home, at Missouri, Georgia at home, Vanderbilt at home.
Give me the homer. Give me the homer over under.
8.5 for Tennessee, I think, is where it's going to be set.
That's a good number, actually. I agree with you on that one. I don't know how they don't take a step back. I just don't. I don't understand.
You damn. Why do you hate Joe Milton?
I don't understand how they don't take you cannot have the most efficient season in the history of Tennessee quarterbacking, better than Peyton Manning, and expect to be as good.
Better overall roster.
Remove that.
Coaching continuity.
They lost their coordinator.
Yeah, he was coordinator in name.
Defensive coordinator is Tim Banks is okay. He's nothing special.
I think LSU, Kentucky, Pitt, they would all say differently, Braden.
I don't know. The third string quarterback for Pitt seemed to do pretty well.
That's only because they knocked out the other one.
Yeah, and couldn't stop the third stringer. I think Texas A&M is going to beat them. I think A&M is going to beat them.
I think that's a top 15 matchup that people don't realize is going to be.
I think they're going to lose that game, and it's because I'll be there, and my daughter will be. And it's because I'm taking my daughter to her first Neyland Stadium experience that, of course, they're going to lose to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That's during Metro National School's fall break. So perfect time to take her up to Neyland and teach her about being disappointed.
So you're smashing the under, it sounds like.
No, I actually think 9-3 is about right, but I think Bama and Georgia lose. I think they lose to Bama and Georgia. So the question is if they lose those two and then lose, I think 8-4 is probably what my final prediction will be for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anything about Tennessee actually. It's more about the ecosystem around them. Texas A&M is better. Kentucky is going to be better. South Carolina is going to be as good. Missouri could be better. Like, it's all about everyone else around them. Even Vanderbilt has shown lots of progress in the last 2 years. So it's more about what's happening around Tennessee.
Yeah.
I agree that the roster overall is slightly better, but all those recruits that they got on the defensive line, they're not going to affect the game this year. They got one of the best defensive line classes in school history. Those guys aren't going to start this year. If one guy is in the regular rotation as a true freshman, that is a successful class.
Yeah.
2 years from now, they'll all be starting, and they could be damn good. I think that's the year you target. Nico's sophomore season with the next top 2 or 3 classes stacked on top of each other in Heupel's 4th year. That's the year that they could beat Georgia. They get Bama at home that year, and they could win the division. I don't think they're there yet. And I don't think, much like with Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton has never been a starting quarterback. He's never started a season in his life. He's been given lots of chances. It's certainly possible that he could have his best season this year. He probably will. I think he should be the starter. I don't think Nico's ready yet, but at the same time, it's not fair to him to expect Hendon Hooker production.
Mm-hmm.
Also, without Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman and Darnell Wright, like, it's just not. I know they fill some gaps, and McCoy and Squirrel are very good, but like, I just don't think it's fair to Joe Milton to expect Hendon Hooker production. I just don't think that's fair. So I do think it's between 8 and 9. So I think they're good. I think they're dangerous. I don't feel good about that pick,
This is the last time I'm doing your damn show.
Okay, sorry.
All right, Vanderbilt. Last but not least, Hawaii.
What do you do? You hammer in the? You think they're?
Yeah.
You think they'll be 10-2?
Yep, probably or 9.
Bottle of whiskey. 10-2. How about this? 10 wins for you, 8 wins for me. If they hit 9, we push and nothing happens.
Okay.
If they hit 10, I owe you a bottle of whiskey. If they hit 8, you owe me a bottle of whiskey. Sound good?
Oh yeah, I'll take free booze anytime. All right, Vanderbilt, Hawaii at home.
I'm gonna call you from Neyland Stadium, walking out when they've lost to A&M, and be like, they already lost to Florida, dude.
Alabama A&M at home, at Wake Forest, at UNLV, Kentucky at home, Missouri at home, at Florida, Georgia at home, at Ole Miss, Auburn at home, at South Carolina, and at Tennessee. I got the over-under for the Commodores, 3.5.
I'll go over on that one.
I think so, too.
I'll go over on that one.
Vanderbilt always getting disrespected. They're getting better and better.
One of the bets I actually had money on last year, I hammered the over. I think it started like 1.5, and then it went to 2.5 at the start of the season. And I think I think one of my biggest bets last year was over 2.5 for Vanderbilt. I got to 5.
Yeah.
So AJ Swan, I think, is a really talented player.
Yeah.
They've got some continuity on the coaching staff. They are slowly building. I will take the over on that. I don't know what games they win in the conference. Like, as we just talked about, like, there's a lot of winnable games in there where you get Missouri or Kentucky at home.
Yeah.
But like, those are also teams we just talked about as being pretty good.
Yeah.
We both like Kentucky and Missouri. So South Carolina, Tennessee, like where are they gonna? They're gonna have to pull some upsets in the conference. I think if they go 2-6 in the league, I think that's a successful year.
Yep.
And if you can get 3 wins in non-conference, you hit again 5-7. I think is good. I think that's a good season for Vanderbilt. So I know they want to take a step and get to a bowl, but I don't know if they're there yet. But continuity, quarterback play. There's things to be optimistic about for Vanderbilt. So
no doubt. Well, Braden, I got to jump off here, so I appreciate you coming in, even though this is your show.
This is my show.
It's your show.
You want me to wrap it up?
You came in here.
I did. Well, you were gracious enough to give me some content as well, so we appreciate that. Tell everybody where everybody can find you and your work and your show and the YouTube page and all that good stuff.
Yeah, That SEC Podcast. Just search that out. We even got the website, That SEC Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms, YouTube, or search me, SEC Mike. I should be the only one. There's probably imitators by now, but I'm the real one.
You're the real one. And if you want to listen to that other SEC podcast, Fringe Element, I might just change the name from Fringe Element to that other SEC podcast.
That'd be funny.
and we could just figure out what to do with the trademark rights somewhere down the road. No, thank you. Always a pleasure to come in and hang out with you. If you want to listen to the West version, our conversation on the West, go check it out all over those platforms that you just mentioned. That SEC Podcast. Michael Bratton, everybody. My name is Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. This has been a special edition of Fringe Element right here on the 440 Sports Network.